the transition to home really had to do with having kids.
Uh,
And and actually I struggled with this a lot. Like the family working right into the identity of an architect. I'm like, because I'd been the identity of an architect since I was in undergrad, and then I was like made it more and more and went to work, and then I got my license and everything. And it was like I didn't know what it was like, how much the role of being a mom would change me. I mean, I really wanted kids. I wanted kids probably 5 years before I actually had kids, because like kids are so cute and they're like so fun, and I really wanted to be a mom. Like, how are these not compatible? Okay, they're
right.
and I just want to emphasize to all women and men out there that families are compatible with architecture, but there is a hump. There is something to rebalance, and it's not so easy.
So,
But
so, so,
yeah.
so you were working in the office, the standard 9 to 5, 9 to whatever the hours
Yeah.
were.
Hmm.
When you were working from home, did you start your own practice? Is that what happened, or were you still
No,
working at the same
no.
office but just from home?
Yeah, there was a long time where I had both of my pregnancies at Field Paley. So
Okay.
like and actually it's funny, I like call out that period because it's actually really an interesting 9 month period where you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to be something else, or something, there's impending change. And
Yeah.
so you have to think about what it is, and you have quite a while. And actually the wonderful thing about Field Paley, and maybe other offices too, I'm sure there are other offices, everyone's a real, they have real compassion. There are really nice bosses out there. There are people who really care and want you to have your out of office life. And I think there was this apprehension that like if I did less at work, that would mean something different.
Hmm.
Um, and and actually there was definitely a reinforcement at that firm that like you can have your life. But the adjustment is something that you just have to be aware of. Um, and and part of that is having the flexibility to take things home. This is all like as remote work was starting to evolve. It wasn't brand new, but like, you could take some home and then you could work from home a little bit. And actually, you probably did it anyway because you had a project that was due the next day and you didn't want to stay in the office all night.
Mm.
So the laptop and the like VPNs and all that stuff, um, it makes it sound like it's such ancient history, but it's not not that long ago. And like it just gives you pause for how fast things have really changed. And like this nature of work being more digital over time too is something else, and seeing people in the same space and all that. So okay, so I got a taste for what it was like to work from home. And um and so uh, unfortunately, the 2007-8 recession happened.
Hmm.
And so, like, right as I was taking maternity leave with my daughter, I really saw some huge changes that happened that weren't Field Paley's fault at all. Like, they're the economy collapsing and like the recession, the Great Recession starting. And then on top of that, in 2010 or so, uh, 11 or 12, somewhere in there, the state of California um, decided not to have redevelopment agencies anymore. And that was like one of our biggest clients as planners in the past.
Mm.
Redevelopment agencies are like a combination of economic development departments, community development departments, and planning departments all rolled up into one with more power and more money. And so the potential or ability to do big civic projects changed overnight, and I don't think it'll ever quite recover.
Mm.
Other states have it. California just doesn't have it anymore. And maybe it'll come back. Who knows? It's all policy. You can rewrite it. The rules can change. And so, yeah, so I decided to do something different. I knew I couldn't come back, not because they couldn't, well, I just knew I couldn't come back. And actually, I had a big, long period of feeling a little bit jaded about, why did I work this hard? Why did I put in all these hours? and like get 2 master's degrees, and I feel like I'm completely useless and not hireable anymore, right? Like, what is going on? And that has to do with the economy, right? It's not your
Right.
personal issues.
But
But it gets all mixed up with the maternity field.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Economy, but also now you have this responsibility for these 2 kids,
Yeah, which I'm
and
not doing alone. I got my husband, but like,
right,
and actually, I have to acknowledge his support. Like, can't do anything without a really strong partner that is like, go get him, go do what you want to do. So, um, so there's that, and also like pitching in, like, it's an awesome help, always a great dad. So that's all in place. But then I was like, you know what? I can't go back. I'm not an architect anymore, or something like that. I had like these terrible, like, I hate architecture. I don't know. Have you ever felt like you hate architecture? Maybe you have,
every day.
but like, I know a lot of students have.
well, no, I think
Every day you're like, I hate architecture.
And, it's like a love-hate, right? Like you hate it, but you want more.
I think the issue that you're highlighting specifically is a good one, because when you're in school and you're an undergraduate student or even grad student and you're in that academic environment, it's pretty easy to be motivated, because surrounded by people who are doing that, the system is built for you to be motivated, and it's just purely about education and serving your own needs to learn and to create. But the forces that are at play in the real world make it very difficult to maintain that level of excitement for those reasons. And then you throw in student debt. I don't know if you had student debt, but, people have hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt. You throw in really low pay, long hours, and then you realize at some point, like you're saying, well, it'd be nice to be a human being and have kids and have whatever else. And I think it's a narrative that's common for a lot of younger architects in their, I don't know, mid 30s or early 30s. They realize at some point, like, well, fuck this. Like, I've put in all this work to architecture, dear
What
architecture,
is this for?
and you're not giving me anything back. Like, come on.
I know.
Yeah.
And you're watching your friends who are taking tech jobs.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I hate you all. And then, like, I know I have the skills that you have. And actually, that was the point.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of former architects that
Yeah.
go into other
And-
things. And actually, this is going to be real for pretty much everyone who stays on the path or gets off the path. Like, to stay on the path, you have to consider your other options too, right? At some point, you're like, what else am I good at?
Yeah.
And there will be another downtime. I know, like, right now we're kind of hitting a high, even though it's been a pandemic and everything, but like the economy's roaring. I don't know why. And I think there's some strange feeling when the chips are down, like, oh crap, what did I do this for? So what did I do? I kind of like looked at my brother at the time was working at Slanted Door restaurant in San Francisco. And there was something about what he was doing. He was like a general manager, basically. He like helped build the restaurant and like put the menus together and like he helped the chef a lot in sort of these different. I was like, oh, look at your world. The things that you do every day satisfy people on a daily basis. I was getting really sick of like everything I do, I won't see until like my kids are old,
Right.
Yeah.
There's no satisfaction at all in like daily. I don't see things built. I have friends who have like, oh yeah, that building I've done. I had very few of those. And in fact, like when I look at my portfolio, it's like all these dreams, like all these, what are these dreams for? So I had this crisis of like, why am I doing this? And so I thought I'd pivot. I was like, look, I have skills. I have graphic design skills. That's the first thing I was thinking. Okay. And then I'm like, look, I can cook. I can cook too. And actually there was a really interesting thing that was happening. So my second pregnancy and my first pregnancy, my mom brought me over all these soups that were like things I had never seen before, since I'm Chinese American, that like isn't surrounded by Chinese culture a ton. Some, but not a ton. And she was like, yeah, these are the soups that we bring when people have babies. I was like, that's interesting. And I was like, yum, these are really good. And there was like a huge story around those kinds of foods. And I think being at home with the babies, being like around my brother who's cooking and his wife who's also like doing all that as well. She was pregnant too. We were like cooking and eating and doing things together a lot. I was like inspired. I was like, oh wait, I had this one night. I woke up. I'm like, I'm gonna do a soup company. Okay, and then I like dreamt a few more nights. I'm like, the soup company is gonna be called Mama Tong. And then it was. Oh, sorry, this is my office. I'm going out of order. And basically, the soup company idea was like this little project. It's like, I'm gonna make some labels. So it really started with labels. I'm gonna make this packaging. I'm gonna make some labels. I'm gonna put the soup in the packaging, and I'm gonna see how this goes. And then it became this thing. I'm like, oh, people like this soup. I'm not gonna have a restaurant. I don't want to have a restaurant. I have babies. I'm not gonna have a restaurant. What am I gonna do with this? And I started to test this with my other mom friends because when you have babies, somehow you attract other people who have babies. It works out like that. And so I was like, what do you think of this concept? And I started to like develop and pitch a new business. Like it was kind of interesting. Like it started to evolve, and I decided to go into a night class that was called business planning at the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center in San Francisco. And they have a 16-week program where you have your harebrained idea and you write your business plan. Well, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a go of this because the architecture thing's not working out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do Mama Tong. I'm going to make soup, and I'm going to brand this like super niche post-pregnancy Chinese soup company. Do you think this will fly?
Sounds great.
And I was like, okay, let's do it. Well, what was crazy is that the business planning really helped me understand like what parts of the business are supposed to happen. Like you have customers, you have to find them, you have to market to them, you have to make the money, you have to track all the money, you have to figure out where you're going to cook it, you have to put together a website. It was like a huge project. This is just like any kind of building project, architecture project. It is like you discover it as you go, you're building up something. It's project-based work. And I was really excited about that. And I was making a product, and a product is different than a service. And actually that's something that I pivoted later. But this product, what was crazy is there was this funny little beta tech company at the time called Good Eggs. And Good Eggs, my friend kind of knew someone who's like, oh, you have this weird soup. You want to try to sell it on Good Eggs? And I was like, they're looking for like vendors right now. So I talked to someone, and one of my big problems was I could cook the soup, but I couldn't get it to anyone. Like distribution was really difficult. Right. This is a really different business than architecture. You have to drive it to them. That sucks. Or you have to get it in the grocery store, which has got a barrier of its own. And the craziest thing about Good Eggs was it was an online farmer's market. And actually, it was the first place I got the soup into. And also at the time, there was a bone broth fad. And my soups were all bone broths. So it worked out. It was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh. I started getting all of these orders through Good Eggs. So I had a really non-traditional food company that was like, that was selling soup online. I just realized my daughter started playing violin. I hope you don't mind.
No, we don't hear it.
Anyway, so that was a really interesting. So I was I had a commercial kitchen until in downtown Oakland. I was making the soup.
Wow.
I was delivering it to Good Eggs so they can distribute it all over the Bay Area.
So how
It
long
was
did you do this for? And
hard.
like a rough sense of I mean, I know nothing about that world, but like how much soup was being sold? It sounds like it was pretty successful.
It was the beginning. Okay, so it took me about a year to get everything kind of in place where it wasn't like full experiments all the time.
Hmm.
and then and then I had also gotten Good Eggs as one. I was a vendor for one of them, and then I was still kind of like trying to pitch it to a bunch of people, and I think I did it for 3 to 4 years,
Wow.
and all the way through like my daughter was an infant to when she had to go to preschool, like full-time preschool. So it was a really awesome transition because it was my son had to go to daycare right away, like at 6 months. And well, that's not right away. 6 weeks is right away. A lot of people have 6 weeks old babies and they're like saying goodbye to them and at the daycare. It's like the saddest thing that ever was. And then this thing about architecture pay and income is that it's equal to the daycare cost.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So like any time I wanted to be at work was the same cost as my daycare. And that was also equally sad because I knew I needed to bridge. I wanted to bridge this time. It would be a short period of time. So there was like all those sacrifices with daycare there. And then with my daughter and the soup company, I could just have her home. She was never in real like infant daycare or like daycare until she was about 2 or 3, or like there was some sort of, she was able to go at her own pace, which I was really so grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so there was this time I was building it up, how much soup I was selling. I can't remember, but it was making more than I was making as an architect, which I was like, this is so sad. But it was a different kind of work and a different kind of pace and also a different attitude. Like I had to go from being an employee and thinking about a regular paycheck to being like, I need to make that sale. That's an entrepreneur's mindset. Instead, like I got to make the bottom line. I need to make the sale. And so that was a big shift in character too. Maybe it was already in me, but like that mindset of like how you get work changed. And so there was this time I was like in the kitchen all the time, trying to get my marketing all right and like trying to get this out to the world. And I also burnt out in that too. It's hard not to. I'm not a natural cook. I'm a natural architect. So that was a realization about 3 years in. I had built this whole thing. It was a real thing. I was making fine income off of it. And it was really hard. And then I realized, as one does with your experiments, that the project or experiment is allowed to end. It's okay.
Right.
So I closed it. And then what was really crazy was 1 month later, my friend Lindsay came out of the woodwork. I didn't know who she was at the time. And she was like, I want to buy your business. I was like, what? So she bought Mama Tong, and she continues to run it today. Wow. She's at the Temescal Farmers Market every Sunday. She has her own production kitchen near Berkeley Bowl. And the soups, I've seen other people with the soups and the labels. That label I made is like, I was at a yoga class and I was like, they were drinking out of a jar with the label on it, the bone broth label. And I was like, oh! Like, it's like seeing some weird thing out in the wilds. You're like, oh my God, this has gone places without me.
Yeah.
And that's a really wonderful feeling. You had a baby, went out there, became a human. It's like walking around with all the other strangers. That was a really crazy moment. So, so that was a definitely, it's a long, big story, but it's also a pivotal story because during that time, I learned a lot of things about who I am, what I'm capable of, and also to reimagine what my career could be, and also to learn I am an architect. I have these skills. I gotta make the most of them. And so there wasn't like a super easy transition back. I couldn't just come back to Field Pilly and be like, hey, how's it going? Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I actually had a very gradual transition back.